Hey everyone, it's Dr. Dombrowski here. I wanted to hop on and say hello and talk a little bit about researching environmental problems and what we can do to solve some of the social problems that we've talked about so far this semester. Before we get started with the lecture, I wanted to thank everybody for all the great work that you've been doing during this abbreviated summer session. All of your posts have been fun to read. You have some really great ideas out there, and hopefully the class is inspiring you to figure out what you can do in your own communities to help with social problems. Excuse me. So thank you again for all of your hard work. I know it's a commitment in the summer to do an entire semester's worth of work in just a few weeks. So I do appreciate that you guys have done that. I will be catching up with grading. If you haven't heard anything from me, then assume that you're doing just fine. And if you have heard from me, I know we've made a plan to help you be successful in the class. So always reach out if there's anything that I can do to help. So I wanted to start a little bit talking about why sociologists are concerned with environmental problems. And this is one of the reasons why our department, criminal justice sociology, also includes environmental studies. There's a huge need for sociologists to be able to do environmental studies. And you'll see why as we talked about some of the things in this lecture. You may want to think about adding an environmental studies minor on to your sociology major or criminal justice major. Classes overlap, so you're not taking a ton of extra classes, but it is a very valuable skill and knowledge to have on a resume, especially if you see yourself going into any type of conservation work, whether it's as an officer, park ranger, or a sociologist who wants to study our communities and our environment. So all you have to do is just talk to Dr. Robinson and find out what to do to declare that major and or declare that minor and what classes you would need to take. So something to consider. Now, we know that we rely on natural resources for everything. And if you think about how your day starts and what you do, you can begin to identify some of the resources that you're using. Maybe the first thing that you do when you wake up is wash your face, brush your teeth. You're using water, you're using toothpaste, right? Maybe you're using mouthwash, something that is helping you stay fresh. Maybe you jump in the shower and then you're using water, you're using soap, you're using shampoo, you're making coffee, making breakfast. All kinds of resources are out there. One of the things that humans are really good at is making things easier for ourselves. So we try to do things as quickly as we can, as efficiently as we can, and as creatively as we can to get through our day. So when I was a kid growing up, it was still, you have to boil the water for the coffee. Maybe you have instant coffee and you're just putting it in your cup and waiting for the water to boil to take however long it takes to make your coffee. Maybe you're making your breakfast at the same time, and it took a long time to get ready. Now we have things like Keurigs where you just pop in the cup and you have a single cup of coffee right in your cup, ready to dash out the door. Sometimes these solutions that make our lives easier actually end up using food, shelter, and water in a way that creates new social and new environmental problems or issues that are out there. So environmental sociologists study the natural environment. They will look at how we use resources, how we use our natural streams, our mountains, our forests, how our behavior affects the animals in our natural environment. And they also looked at what we refer to as our built environment, which is the part of our surroundings that we as humans have actually created. So shelter, roads, vehicles, appliances, furniture, phones, electronic devices. Right now in the news in many cities, AI data centers are being looked at to see the damage that they may cause if they're set up in certain areas and the resources that they may use. So sociologists are involved in looking at all of this. And they're kind of looking at the big picture of how does our behavior and embracing of these new creations affect the earth, affect the world, and affect our resources. So one of the things that sociologists have coined is this idea of treadmills of production. Now, this refers to the continuous consumption that we love to engage in. And all you have to do is look around you to see the consumption. You can go into thrift stores and see all the stuff people didn't want that they had donated. You can see how quickly we can get things from Amazon and how easy it is to buy things that you don't really need, but you want, or an influencer recommended them, right? So we have a lot of things out there. If you think about having a car, and maybe you bought it from a dealership, you might want to look at how many cars the dealership had, how many different choices were there, how many dealerships were in the city where you were buying a car. If you're familiar with Buffalo, when you drive around certain parts of Buffalo, you see that there are lots of different dealerships with lots of different cars out there. And then sociologists would think a little bit deeper when seeing all of these cars. And they might ask themselves, how are there enough resources for us to manufacture so many cars? And why is there such a large demand for vehicles? Why do we need new vehicles if the old vehicles still work? I'm someone who will drive my car until it absolutely cannot be driven anymore. But I know many people, friends and family members who will upgrade their car every few years, even though there's nothing wrong with the car before them. So these are examples of the treadmills of production. And it's good to know that term in sociology, know that it refers to the social processes that drive continuous production of goods. So as we keep finding efficient ways to create new goods, we end up figuring out how to profit from them. So profits drive the social process of treadmills of production. Usually, if we can find a way to do automated production of goods, it will reduce the cost of producing items. So it's cheaper to produce them, making the profit even more. For production to happen, we know demand is required. So if there is a demand for a certain product, then people are going to be competing to produce it better, faster, stronger, at a better price than their competitors. So sociologists wonder what drives this human behavior of wanting more and more and more and more. So some of the things that research has shown us is that humans have an expectation for quality to get better over time. So we are always looking for the next new thing, the new and improved version of something that we have. Advertisers love to push these new products on us, right? All you have to do is, if you sit down and watch regular TV with ads, you see They're trying to sell us everything that they can under the sun. This relates to the idea of consumerism, which is this idea that people and their value are defined by the products and services that they consume. So, excuse me, advertisers feed the consumerism, and the consumerism in turn kind of feeds the advertising, right? So it's a back and forth type of situation. Sociologists talked in the research about something called conspicuous consumerism, which means this process of human behavior where we put value on goods that we can display to others as a symbol of our status and economic power. So maybe if someone gets a fancy job, they decide that they want to have a nice new car to show their status. And maybe they're going to go with a car that is super fancy. It could be a Mercedes, a BMW, a Ferrari, right? Depending on the money that they're bringing in. Think about brand names, wearing clothes of a certain brand, wearing shoes of a certain brand, excuse me, handbags of a certain brand, right? Showing, hey, this is my status. I can afford to wear this jewelry. I can afford to carry these bags around. And this communicates to other people that we have a certain amount of wealth, which implies a certain amount of status. What ends up happening is we just increase our waste. And a lot of people add to this by deciding to replace items rather than repair them. So if I have a handbag and the handle breaks, it's easy to just toss the handbag out and go buy a new one. When I was growing up, we didn't live far from Amish country. And if my mom's handbag broke, it was a leather handbag. She used the same bag for my entire life. And I had 35 years with her, so that's a good quality leather handbag. If it broke, she would take it to the Amish and they would fix it rather than just buying it. And it would be $5, $10, $15, maybe $20 at the most for them to make the repair. And she would rather pay the $20 for the repair than buy a new bag because that was her favorite one. But now we're more into this disposable type of lifestyle where everything can be easily replaced with something new. Now, businesses and product developers know this. So in some cases, they do something called planned obsolescence, which means that they design products on purpose to retain their worth only for a short time. So it will only be good for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. A lot of people say that this happens with cell phones. Your cell phone will work until it will stop updating. It won't be able to hold the updates. So that means you have to upgrade and get a new one. Now, advertisers and businesses also rely on something called perceived obsolescence, which refers to us as consumers feeling like we need to have the most current product because our product is not even good enough, even if it's still useful. So they kind of flood our thinking with this idea that, hey, you need to have the next best phone. The phone's not good enough. You need to have the next best car. You need to have the next best outfit. Any of those types of things. I don't even know what iPhone they're on now. I think I have an iPhone 13, maybe could even be an 11. I'm not really sure. I don't keep up with that stuff. I keep my electronics until they absolutely don't work anymore. So it's easy to fall into this trap of advertisement, thinking that we always need the next new thing, when really we're just creating more waste. So when we create more products, it fills landfills with things that are not going to ever really break down. So the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, estimates that people in the United States produce roughly 6 pounds of waste a day. And of that, only about 32% is recycled. About 18 tons can be used for animal feed or food donations before going into a landfill. So if it's food that's on the verge of expiring, it could be given to animals as animal feed. We don't want to give expired food to animals or to people. So that's a little bit of a different story. But the EPA does say that about 2 million tons of trash ends up in our landfills. So it's a lot of trash that's out there. Now, landfills can present health risks. So this week I had you watch a short documentary on Love to Know, which was health risks from some company purposely burying their toxic waste. But I also wanted to touch on landfills as well. Landfills can make us sick. They have a liquid component that comes when rainwater and groundwater flows through the mass and carries some of the chemical waste with it, so lactate. Lactate includes heavy metals, petrochems, other liquid waste pollutants that we don't want in our bodies. Landfills also release methane gas, primarily methane gas, but there are some other gases that are produced when waste decomposes. If you're following local news at all, right now in Niagara Falls, there is a huge landfill, and it's right in the middle of a residential section. So if you've ever been to the Factory Outlet Mall, when you're riding on I-190 North and you're going into the city of Niagara Falls, the first thing you see on your left-hand side is a landfill. It's this big, huge, green, lush hill with white stakes stuck in it to let the methane gas out. The smell is extremely noxious. It's like, welcome to Niagara Falls. This is the smell. Here's our landfill. In the residential area, a lot of people have been reporting different types of cancers. And it's just now coming to the front that they could be related to the people who've lived in that area their entire lives by the landfill from all of the chemical components that come from the landfill itself. So something just to keep an eye on if you're in the news and you're into local stories. It wasn't until 1976 that we started getting federal systems forming regarding disposal of waste. And it wasn't until 1987 that Congress decided that US landfills have to meet engineering requirements to reduce the amount of lactate and landfill gas that they have. So they come up with some regulations that line landfills with plastic. A collection system needs to be set up to pump waste to a wastewater treatment system. You will also see that if you're driving on the Robert Moses Parkway toward the Niagara Falls State Park. You can see the pumps for the wastewater treatment system there. Landfills have to be covered daily, and they had to install the pipes to vacuum out landfill gas and burn it to reduce emissions. So you can see sometimes at night, if you're driving, the landfill kind of burning some of the stuff to reduce some of the emissions. But it seems to be making people sick. So we have to think about ways we can reduce our waste. A new, somewhat new concern is e-waste, which is when we throw out our old electronics or pieces of electronics. There's at least roughly 54 million metric tons of e-waste yearly. A lot of it ends up in poor nations. Some of it gets burned, releasing chemicals in the air. That's why you're not supposed to throw it just in your regular garbage. And some is just left outside in huge piles for people to try to salvage parts. You might see they have electronic recycling days where you can drop off old electronics for them to be disposed of properly. That's an attempt to try to help reduce some of the waste that's here. So why do sociologists care about this? Well, we want to preserve everything that we can for future generations. We care about the now, we want to improve, and we also care about the later on. We want to help our systems that are in place better understand the issue of waste and how to reduce it so that we can make policies and we can understand the effect that all of this consumption behavior is having on our society. And if it will contribute to harming us in the long run more than it's helping us. So one of the things that sociologists advocate is that we need to reduce the number of goods created. We have to focus on repairable products. We have to increase the features of single devices. And we need government policies put into place to reduce waste. So I had you guys watch the Earth Song video by the artist Michael Jackson. That is the worst case scenario of what sociologists are afraid will happen if we do not mend the damage that we've done and prevent further damage to the resources that we have. So government policies sometimes can be some things that have happened recently, like phasing out use of plastic straws, phasing out the plastic grocery bags, maybe encouraging people to thrift instead of buy fast fashion from places like Shein or Temu or Fashion Nova, any of those fast types of fashion places, and getting back to our creativity and upcycling products. So maybe you're really good at thrifting and you can find a product and give it new life. I have a friend who does that, and she does amazing work. She redoes furniture that she finds at thrift shops, and you would never, ever, ever know that the furniture had a previous life from what it has in her home. She has the gift of design, creativity, and vision to see new life in different products. So if we tap into our creativity a little bit more and use the stuff we already have in a different way, it would help us reduce some of our waste. We refer to this in sociology as virtual environmentalism. And what this means is making more environmentally friendly choices and making them less expensive and more accessible and more convenient to people than other choices. So something like a bike sharing program, like we have in Buffalo, where bike share stops near Canisius. Some of you may use those. If you don't need to drive, Buffalo is a hard city. You kind of need to drive. Our mass transportation is not the best. So maybe rebuilding some of that would help us with some of the stuff that's out there. But, think about ways that you can maybe walk to places instead of drive if it's nice weather. Maybe not a far walk, it's safe, you're with friends, you want to walk somewhere, get some good exercise, right? Like I've been trying to do that a lot more. Walking and just enjoying what we have at a little bit slower pace. We can start programs that make it easier for people to recycle, things that use less energy, or maybe we use fewer plastic bottles, right? If you've seen me on campus, if you've met me, you know I always have water with me. I always have a drink with me because of my dry mouth and all my survivor issues here when I'm trying to speak. So I've been trying not to use water bottles anymore. And my friend gifted me a fantastic Blingy Buffalo Bills Stanley style mug that's always around me. So I've been trying to do my little part. Remember, you don't have to solve the entire social problem yourself. Even small changes have a ripple effect. So it's one of the other ripple effects I'm trying to start for myself by reducing waste and not having a million water bottles around. Think about there are places now that you can take your bottles and cans to um, and recycle them all at once instead of having to go to the grocery store and put them one at a time into the machines, which is fine. It's still recycling them, but it's takes a while for that to happen versus just dumping it out on the counter and having someone else help you count them out and then giving you back your deposit money. Anything that we can do, just small steps, is something that's going to have an effect. Helping the younger people in our family understand the need for us to conserve our resources so that we have them, so that we're not in a position where we have to worry about our water. We want to advocate, choose leaders who will take care of problems if our water is contaminated. If people are struggling, we know that the people in Flint, Michigan still do not have clean water. We need to have people on board helping us with making change and understanding that all of our behaviors are affecting our world and our environment and our resources. So, this is just a little short lecture. I wanted to make sure that you knew why sociologists are so passionate about this piece of sociology, which a lot of people don't realize fits in with sociology. If you are interested, like I said, reach out to me or to Dr. Robinson on the environmental studies minor that we offer. This is especially useful. Maybe you're an ABEC major and you want to add that on. That would be a fantastic addition to your skill set and to your diploma. But it's an absolutely important and interesting area. Dr. Robinson is well versed in environmental studies. She's a great person to talk to further about some of that, and her research and knowledge focuses a lot on this area of sociology. So absolutely feel free to reach out to her if needed. And if there's any questions you have, let me know. Hopefully in this unit, you understand seeing the Earth Song video and that being the worst case scenario of what will happen to our world. Maybe even in my lifetime. We don't know, right? Every day is different. Hopefully you've watched the short documentary on Love to Know to see how people locally in real life have been affected by toxic waste that corporations dumped, how they're still affected all of these years later, and how it took 21 years for any cleanup to happen and for any legislation to happen, despite it being, um, deemed a state of emergency by President Carter. It took a really long time for people to get any motion forward and any assistance in that area. Um, Love to Know has a personal connection to me. My mom and her siblings grew up in that area and experienced a lot of health problems. My mom had 4 different types of cancer in her lifetime, which they tied to her living in that area. Um, my aunt also had problems. My mom had reproductive issues, so did my aunt, multiple miscarriages, both of them. My uncle now has a form of cancer and he's doing well, thankfully, but they're pretty sure it's due to them living in the Love to Know area. And then you guys know I had 4 battles with my own cancer, which I had no risk factors for. We did some genetic testing and they suspect that it is due to my mom living in this area of Niagara Falls that was affected. So it's interesting to see that people still live there. Part of it was deemed habitable to live there by the EPA. So people did, move back to their homes or they sold their homes and people moved in. If you drive through the area, you can see it looks just like any other neighborhood. You wouldn't really necessarily know what happened there unless you watched the documentary or lived locally. Um, but I think I would be too scared to live there, honestly, even without any of my health issues or that personal connection. I don't know that I would be able to live in that area knowing what had happened. So, um, hopefully, you enjoy watching that documentary in an informative way. And I will see you in the next lecture where we will talk a little bit about how we can solve our social problems. So thank you so much for listening, and I will see you guys soon. Take care. Bye.